I'm not genetically gifted. I'm at where I'm at because of hard work, early mornings, late nights. Really analyze yourself, really analyze your game. Pick out, let's say, your top 3 strengths, top 3 weaknesses. Boom. After training session, after your team training, you're doing 10 to 15 minutes work on your strengths, 5 to 10 minutes work on your weaknesses. I want to create that professional academy online, be the mentor and the big brother to footballers because I never had a mentor.
Eric Friedlander is the self-taught professional footballer who made it from living in America and never playing for an academy.
What age do you think Haaland's dad thought that Haaland is going to be a centre forward?
That's a good question. In the US, is it bad that Americans play a ton of sports, or is it good? Football is not just about signing your first pro contract or playing in college. It's about
multi-sport approach. I think a lot of that stuff is quite outdated now.
The best players are practicing football. Hello and welcome back to Project Footballer, the voice of youth football. Eric, why is this conversation going to be helpful to parents of footballers and other people involved in youth football?
First of all, I want to thank you for having me on. Beautiful studio. First time in a legit studio, so thank you. Second of all, answering your question, the main reason it's going to be helpful is I was an only child raised by a single mother, and I always wish that I had opportunities that players have now. And my whole goal, like I was telling Matt before, is to be the mentor and the big brother to footballers because I never had a mentor. Like I said, my mom was always working, and I thank her so much for giving me the opportunity to be where I'm at today. Wouldn't be where I'm at without her. But I also never really had that figure in my life to guide me in the right direction. And I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of good decisions, but a lot of bad decisions as well. So I want to be the mentor and the big brother to footballers to guide them in the right direction, because you and me both know, like we spoke about on the phone, football is not just about signing your first pro contract or playing in college or, doing it for the fans. It's about the development of yourself through this journey. So whether you want to be a pro, play in college, get into the A team, get into the academy, it's a metamorphosis as a human. And everything you learn on the pitch and all that stuff you learn through the hard training is what you take into your next path. The discipline, the time management, the relationships that you build, the network, the communication skills. That's why I think it's so beautiful. We both know that there can be toxicity in it.
Yeah.
But the goal is to take the benefit from it.
So can you tell our audience why you're that person to be that mentor? Yeah.
So, just going back to my journey, currently 29 years old, living in Latvia. It's a Baltic country. There's 3 Baltic countries. You got Lithuania and Estonia. And Latvia is also, it's close to Russia. So it's very cold up there. But yeah, my journey's been interesting. Raised in Long Island, New York for 18 and a half years. Then I did a year at boarding school in Minnesota. Place was called Shattuck St. Mary's. Most people know it from a lot of NHL players come from there, but they're really building their football development program. Okay. And that's the first time that I really was away from home. And that really helped me on my journey to becoming a pro. So after that, I did 1 year at the University of Buffalo. I was studying pre-dentistry because my mom wanted me to do it. I like keeping my teeth nice teeth on girls, but for me, just wasn't me,
Okay.
But I was always obsessed with the body.
Right.
I was always obsessed with improving myself, and that marginal edge, those little bits that you can gain from doing the extra work, from doing one more rep.
So what age are you at this point?
So right now what I'm talking about is about 19, 20. So went to University of Buffalo, studied, ended up, we were playing Division I soccer, Division I football.
For the university?
For the university,
college, right, okay.
Yeah, so that's like the the highest, level.
Okay.
But I would say only like the top 25, top 30 schools, are really, they can play football. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the athletes there are pretty incredible.
Okay.
So, I had a great time, like best social time of my life,
Yeah.
like tons of friends, always things to do. But I've always been a pretty disciplined guy. And I really got into all this self-study at 15. I don't know what really got me into it, but I started reading football strength and conditioning books. Because I'm not genetically gifted. I'm at where I'm at because of hard work and grafting and doing the extras and early mornings, late nights. So I always wanted to gain that extra edge over the opposition. And like I said, I didn't get into, but I didn't grow up in like a top academy like in Europe, which I wish I did. So another reason this is going to be useful for parents is my whole goal is I want to create that professional academy as much as I can online, because not everyone has that access to these beautiful places and live in these countries that have that football environment.
Yeah.
So, going back to the story, I was studying dentistry. I ended up switching to exercise science because I've always been into the body.
Yeah.
And then I got an opportunity out in Germany to play.
How?
So I saw this, it was an advertisement that got me. So before I went to college, I took this opportunity where you can go for a month to Germany. You can play with a 5th or 6th tier club in Germany. And people will hear the numbers and they think that's like very low level. But when you get on the pitch with these guys, they know what they're doing. They might not be athletically great, but their mind, their football IQ, their decision making is top level. Because a lot of those guys who are playing in 4th, 5th, and 6th tier played at the top academies, played at the top levels, and either they have a family now or they got an injury. So it was interesting to see that. So I did that for 1 year before, for 1 month before going into my college career. And I always had there were a couple teams that wanted to sign me, like 5th and 6th tier teams, but I had already committed to university. And once you make that commitment, to university in America, you basically got to make it or you get some kind of fine or fee. So I ended up going through it.
So that was, did you essentially get scouted in Germany then on this month-long trip?
No. So I got scouted from, when I was playing in this boarding school in Minnesota. So I got scouted from there to play. I got a couple of Division I offers, Division II, Division III, but a lot of kids, you know how it is, like people want to strive for this. So like I wanted to play Division I. I got scouted there to go to Buffalo. Then we found out about this through this agency. I'm not going to mention them and give them shout out because it wasn't a good thing. But it got me into the environment.
Yeah.
And that's the whole goal. You got to get entrenched and into the environment.
Yeah.
And long story short, I went over there, 20 years old. I've always been a pretty decent footballer and but never really actually self-reflected and got challenged by people.
Mm-hmm.
So I became really good friends with this kid who played for a top academy in the U.S., also wanted to play in the pro journey. And, one thing, if we get to the technical side of things, he said, like, yo, Friedlander, your right foot is excellent. You strike the ball really well. You're a strong player, but your left foot is terrible. How did you play Division I soccer? How did you play Division I football with a left foot like that? And I'm a big guy on dark side motivation.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I took that into me.
What's dark side motivation?
So like when you have critics, when you have naysayers, when people are talking crap about you online, on Twitter, in whatever it is. He wasn't talking crap. He was telling me the truth.
Yeah.
And for me, we can get into it, but I never like to hang around yes men. I like to hear the truth from people because that's what makes you better.
Yeah.
It might hurt and stab you in the beginning, but that's what makes you better. So after I heard that, I just went like so hard on my left foot, like wall work, tons of juggling, all the ball mastery stuff. And now I can say my left foot is as good as my right or better.
And so this is around age 20?
20.
Bloody
20.
hell.
So, with that being said, went over to Germany, this agency, I could talk crap about them, but they gave me the opportunity to get in there.
Yeah.
So it was a 1 year thing where I had to pay up front to do it.
Was there any like spiritual stuff at this time? Are you thinking, man, this is my destiny?
No, I actually got more into the spiritual stuff when I was 23, when I got into darker times.
Right,
and I'll get into that.
Okay.
That's when I really started to dive into into meditation, into all this personal development stuff, and that's a lot of the stuff that I'm promoting now.
That's cool
for these young players.
Yeah.
So yeah, 20 years old, did a year there, and learned German.
Wow.
They got me an apartment. And I ended up signing with a team in the 6th tier. So, that's 1 year. And after that, learning German, I took everything into my own hands. And I like this.
So what position of the pitch do you play? Or were you playing at this time?
Right now I play as a fullback, but I can also play as a defensive mid.
Okay, so at this point, when you're playing in this German side, you're in as a defensive midfielder?
No, I'm actually playing. That's when I kind of switched into fullback because I didn't speak German at the time.
Yeah.
And they thought, obviously, center of the pitch, you need to be speaking, you need to be leading. And we'll get into it. But as a foreigner, I didn't want to speak English. I wanted to speak German. I didn't want to be an outcast in a sense,
The Chelsea head of recruitment once said to me, he asked me, what do I think is the easiest position on the pitch to produce footballers? And my answer within 3 seconds was fullback. I played fullback.
Yeah.
And the part of the reason for that is that you've got the line so close to you. The game is really in front of you. It's quite simple. You've got choices to go back to a goalkeeper or down the line or maybe inside into a centre midfielder, but your choices are limited. You don't have to have that 360 awareness. I mean, we can get into this later in a whole conversation because I don't want to interrupt the story too much, but I'm interested in the differences between generalizations of American footballers compared to European footballers. My experience has been just playing a bit of football in America, low level. I was I couldn't believe with American players how bad their reading of the game was as a generalization.
100%.
And I just sort of put it back to, man, these guys have not played football since they've been kids. And so then they didn't quite understand the reading of the game. Athletically, man, they're all great athletes, but it's almost at a very, very high level, what you're describing, that is what I'm interpreting. You've gone over there, maybe not as great football IQ, but wicked athlete. But very quickly they've said, no, centre midfield is not for you, but we'll make you into a really good fullback.
100%. Yeah, very, very well said. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of players now are getting transitioned from, defensive mids or center mids to fullbacks because, like you said, it's much easier. We can see the game face up. And I've never been a good guy back to goal. I've always, when I played in the defensive mid role, I would always have to get into space, have good reading with the center back or good reading with the fullback and get the ball in the half turn and go forward right away. I'm not going to be a Modric and turn guys. I'd rather get into my space, check my surroundings, get it on the front foot and go forward right away. So I'm most dangerous when I'm face up. Not most dangerous when I'm back to goal. So I love the fullback position. I actually, in Latvia, I played a bit in a back three on the side, and I also played as a wing back. So I like that sideline because one of my strengths now is my passing. Any range, and any surface. That's what I love. That's for me. That's my greatest strength, and we can get into it, but. Sort of what I've been diving into with footballers as I've been on my journey and with podcasting is should you continue to go down the path and just make your strengths as good as possible, or should you also really work on those weaknesses? And I've kind of come to the conclusion where it's you want to make your strengths so good that those shine in the game and you go towards that, because I'm not a 1v1 guy. I'm not going to, beat a guy 1v1. I'd rather play a ball, an early ball. Than take a guy 1v1 and play it across the box. I'd rather play an early ball, have one of my strikers flick it on to goal. So, yeah, I mean, with that being said, in terms of Americans, another story is when I was 23 in Germany, they have these pitches on basketball courts. And you see these players, you go and they're out of shape and you're just going there to, have some fun. And then you get onto the pitch with these guys, a small size, and they're just ballers. You know what I mean? Big tummy, but
right.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know their decision before they get the ball.
Yeah.
And I just said to myself, that's the difference between obviously it's getting better in America between, American footballers
Yeah.
and Europeans. Is like, this is in your blood, This is, it's, how to manage games, when to make the right decision. And obviously, I think we all know that the most important thing in football is your decision making.
We've been talking about that a lot recently in terms of your strengths and doubling down on your strengths, because the standard of youth football now is so high that you need to kind of hedge your bets a little bit and understand from an early age, I'm not going to be this type of player. It's just not going to happen. I'm never going to be. You can always get better at things, but your max speed is going to be your max speed. And there are other players whose max speed is going to be their max speed. So then, if you're going to be that sort of player, maybe spend a bit more time working on that and start carving out a little bit more of a niche for yourself and start planning a journey of, chances are I'm going to end up here. So I need to really double down on that rather than spending a lot of time trying to do the other stuff. Do it still. You still want to get better. You still want to improve your weaknesses. But yeah, now with the standard being so high in youth football, is it a case of doubling down on your strengths?
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think, to add on to that, it's like you want to make your weakness, you want to build those weaknesses into like stability where it's not like you're not getting seen on the pitch in a sense, you know what I mean? Where it's like you get yourself to a technical foundation, you get yourself to an athletic foundation, but once you find your strengths and your niche, like you said, you really double down. And it's gotten to a point where it's like, we were talking about before, Sean, the goal is to, after training, you want to work 10 to 15 minutes on your strengths and 5 to 10 minutes on your weaknesses. So if we want to put it into a practical sense, young footballers listening, take your, really analyze yourself, really analyze your game. Get into the weeds of things, and then pick out, let's say, your top 3 strengths, top 3 weaknesses. Boom. After training session, after your team training, you're doing 10 to 15 minutes work on your strengths, 5 to 10 minutes work on your weaknesses.
So that's the hard part, though, because the conversations I have with a lot of parents and players, they don't want to hear it. So people, players and parents, that just raw honesty.
You find they don't want to hear it?
Yeah.
What have been some of your experiences, Matthew?
So you can if you've been involved in a game long enough, you can quite quickly start to see from an early age potentially how the player's going to start to pan out, like the personality and just how they move with the ball and everything else. I mean, we've seen enough players.
What age do you think you could see that? Seeing it.
7, 8, 9.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. But then, I tell you what, I'll take it back. It's not so much, I think it's more the culture that I was mentioning earlier. So maybe it's not so much players and parents not wanting to hear the criticism and the constructive feedback. I think now there's this culture, like I was mentioning earlier, where there's so much hype and praise around young players that when they do come across something that's a little bit more constructive, that's when they don't want to hear it. Because, this coach says he's brilliant at this.
And sometimes you'll find, because the coaches depend on those parents for their income, for the one-to-one training, it's easier to keep hyping the player up and telling the parent that everything's great, because then the parent's like, he's doing so well, and then keep subscribing to that coach. But actually, sometimes we need some medicine that's going to help us.
I mean, we're what I do is we use a bit of data, so it's quite objective, and the sessions I do, we focus on IQ, largely your ability to scan and make a decision, receiving the ball, passing the ball, changing direction quickly. Those are the 4 fundamental things that we work on.
Yep.
So then when I do a session with a player and they struggle with that, but they're doing sessions elsewhere and it might be a lot of dribbling and shooting and they're getting loads of hype and praise in that type of session, but then they come to me and they struggle with that and I say, this isn't up to scratch. Yeah. You get a very kind of, generally speaking, it's quite a negative response from the player and the parent that they don't want to hear the fact that, they're weaker in that area.
This is really interesting because when you're saying there, double down on your strengths, what age group do you think you should do that? Because with what Matthew's talking about, he's dealing with a lot of young players, like let's say under 12 and below. So they need a holistic 100%. Ability in wide range of football. But yeah, it's like, what age do we start getting position specific? Yeah, I suppose that's my question back to you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and you know, maybe I didn't say that right, but I think it comes down to what Matthew said. Like, first of all, you know, like I said in the beginning, you need to be around people who are going to tell you the truth. And in the beginning, it's going to hurt, but that's what you need to work on. But, you know, answering your question, like, for me, like, at 20 years old, I'm being told that my left foot's terrible. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's a weakness. So then you know, instead of, you know, going home and telling myself, no, it's good, and trying to find clips of how good it is, no, I said, boom, I'm going to work on it, you know? And I told myself the truth. But I think up until age like 16, 17, you really just have to work on the basics, the fundamentals, the foundation. And then once you start to get into like real men's football, you're playing real competitive games, I think that's when you can really start to really like analyze everything you do on and off the ball movements. So like in the beginning, you got to develop your foundation and your fundamentals. But once you get into the higher levels and you're more like, I think in the beginning, let's say you're more of a generalist.
Yeah.
And then you become like a specialist, because then you start to play your role in a team.
Yeah.
Then you're starting to play on the weekend for points. You're playing with guys who need to put, you know, food on the table for their family.
Yeah.
The coach, the players. That's when you start to really find your role. And one thing that my best buddy, when I first came to Latvia, I was actually playing as a 6 in the beginning. I was 26. And I was trying to do everything. Like, I was trying to sprint here, sprint there. And he's like, Eric, just stay in the middle of the pitch and receive the ball. You don't need to, you know, get over to the outside back, receive the ball from him. Try to get into higher positions, receive the ball in a better part of the pitch. Don't try to do everything. Just focus on your role, play your role, and then you'll be good. Because I always thought like, oh, I got to stand out and this and that. But like guys like Busquets, they don't get like noticed by the fans, but true football fans, true footballers know how good he is and what he does for the game and the team.
What age do you think Haaland's dad thought that Haaland is going to be a centre forward?
That's a good question.
Because Haaland's dad is not super tall, as I understand. And I wonder when he started to say, because it feels like Haaland has had specialised training for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And I feel like his, whether it's happened through the process of being a striker, he's developed the ice cold personality, composure in front of goal, dealing with pressure brilliantly. But how much of that was innate? How much of that was by design from his dad, or how much of that was just how the household is and what was in his brain? And then that personality suited being higher up the pitch. And then his genetic makeup suited him to be that forward. Maybe there where he was so tall from a young age, he struggled with his technique. But then as that centre forward position, you just need to be able to, you know, have touches out your feet and drive and be cold in front of goal and be very, very good at finishing. It feels like they've done thousands and thousands of hours of finishing with Haaland from I wonder what age. And so you could say, oh wow, if he played as a centre back and if he played in centre midfield and all these sort of rotating positions for a long time, would that have hindered, would that have made him not the specialised striker that he is today? But then there's a reverse of it, because with a lot of football development at younger ages, we're encouraged to rotate positions. And I believe in that, because I think it's better to have a holistic, full understanding of the game. A player who's going to be a centre-back, it's still helpful for them to have some turns in right midfield. If they're playing like 7-a-side, have some experience there when you're young. Rotate, learn how it all is on the pitch. But yeah, I think this is something that I'm struggling with. I haven't got a full decision on, of like, when do you start making those decisions of like when to specialize with your child. And yeah, I don't know the answer, but it's coming into what you're saying of like doubling down on strengths and when to stick at it, when to.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a couple of things there. Like, Also, what's interesting is like the Scandinavian mentality is never like, let's say because I lived in Sweden for 2 years, like they say lagom, not too high, not too low, like that medium. And like Sweden, Finland, and Norway and Denmark are like very similar in mindset and overall things. So I also wonder how he developed that ice cold mindset. You know what I mean? So that's also something to ponder about.
Something to do with like the cold weather and ice baths and all that sort of stuff. Imagine if that environment gave him the ice in the veins, as they say, literally. That's wild.
Yeah.
I think you can, I mean, speaking from, like with Caden, so my nephew, at under 9, 10, I could start to tell what he was going to be like. So if I had the time, I would be doing more with him because he's going to be a centre forward. Like, there's no two ways about it.
Your nephew?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I could tell that from he's 12 now. I could tell that from a couple of years ago.
What attributes you think
he's
you know?
Strong, he's fast, he doesn't have the discipline to play at the back. You need discipline if you're going to play at the back. He's not got the concentration or discipline. He can produce magic, moments of magic. Great strike. Chances are, like mum and dad are tall, like athletic. So chances are he's going to grow into a good athlete. He's already a good athlete now.
He's always struggled with his technique as well, hasn't he?
I don't like the word technique because I think technique relates to a lot of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's never been one to have a perfect first touch and scan and pop it off on his second touch.
And small touches, he struggles with like the grace of touching the ball.
Yeah. So you can start to tell his physical strengths and weaknesses. And then because I know him so well, like his mental. So from his mental strength, he's not mental.
I thought you meant that. That's what forwards are too.
Yeah, well, his mental attributes, he's aggressive. Like I can say now, if it's annoying, if I had the time, I'm confident that I could train him to be a very, very effective number 9 because he's naturally leaning towards that way. I can then provide the best training to make him into a number 9. And I'm just thinking, going back to like Haaland, maybe that's what happened. When he gets to 9, 10, his dad can just start seeing that because his dad was involved in the game. Maybe his dad was just doing hours and hours and hours.
But that's it's so interesting we talk about Caden because it's almost like the weaknesses, the deficiencies make you say, all right, well, this player is not going to be that centre midfielder. You've said he's not going to be a defender because of his concentration. Right. Well, what can we do then? Like, where is he going to be? And yeah, it's almost like deciding the position through the deficiencies.
And he's never really been taught. I was watching him a few weeks ago, and his runs, and I know he's never been coached these types of runs that he was making, and he made them quite naturally. He just started like bending his run.
Wow.
So whether that's from watching a lot of football or it's just one of those things that he's kind of picked up from. I'm not too sure where, because I know he's not been coached that, but he just naturally started bending his runs and showing really, really good off the ball movement as a forward. It's like,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to what Sean said, we're starting to really debate this in the US. Like, how early do you start specialization in sport? You know what I mean? And it's the same thing in terms of like position specific. Like in the US, we try to think in the football sense, like, is it bad that Americans play a ton of sports, or is it good? Like, is it actually developing them athletically?
That's it, man. Like, I think it sounds so good on social media clips to say children need to play all the variety of different sports. This study has shown it.
Yeah.
I'm like, show me that study, because what I've experienced, the best players are practicing football hours and hours and hours a day. And I get it. Like, yeah, there might be a day where you go and do karate, and there's going to be benefit from that. Like, you know, we talk about that. But for me, like swimming, I know you need to know how to swim, but it's like sometimes like the extra sessions, the extra time people are spending on swimming, tennis, rugby, and then they just can't touch the ball the same way that another kid who is practicing dribbling so much, practicing with tennis balls, just obsessed with the ball.
Yes.
You just can't compete.
100%. For me, I always go back to adaptive energy.
Okay.
That's what I tell, because I also coach clients online, one-on-one. And you always have to go back to, if you're spending time on bicep curls instead of working on, the foundations of your technical ability, maybe, bicep curls are, you're going to look good in your jersey and stuff like that, but you're wasting energy on things because we only have finite time.
Yeah.
So you're wasting energy on things that are not bringing you closer to your goal.
Yeah.
And like you said, like I think cross training and other sports come into play in the off season to get your mind off of football.
Yeah.
But when you're at your freshest, you need to be 100% focused, concentrated on the goal, because we train to adapt. That's the reason why we train. We train to adapt, and we train to get better on match day. And that's the most important thing for footballers to realize. When you go into the gym, you're not in there to look good at the beach for the girls. Yeah, it might come as an indirect benefit. When you're in the kitchen and you're eating, you're not in there to get shredded 6-pack abs. You're in there to fuel your performance, recover, and adapt. And these things you all got to think about. Yesterday I was on a podcast with a guy, and I always like to go back to every day is game day.
Yeah.
So if you can treat every day as game day, like it's match day, you're going to get to the next level. Like that amount of focus, that amount of concentration on one goal. And I think it's like, it goes back to the rule of one thing, like one thing at a time.
And I think there's balance in this, because you want the child to be motivated. If they are doing so many boring dribbling between cone sessions in all their time at a very, very young age, that they get to a point where they're actually demotivated with football and they don't want to practice anymore, then you've lost.
True.
So it's finding that balance.
And that's so tough. Balance is so tough. And I think every individual has that balance, and that goes back to, that's why I think like psychology and like knowing the individual and actually tuning into what they want to do. And I think it all goes back to like, they need to just find their love for the game themselves. Like I'm not a parent yet, I will be in the future, but like, I know I'm going to introduce my kids to football and give them a ball and see what they do with it. But I'm not going to push them, because when you're pushed, it just results in something bad.
That's it. There's a boy called Khalil who's one of the top players in England, in Europe, and I look a lot at like his program and what his dad does, and we speak a lot. And he does boxing quite a bit now, and I think that part of the reason there's physical development that's happening from the boxing, and but like the dad is thinking about how does he keep Khalil like so motivated. But the amazing thing with football is that there's such a variety of training. You could be, like I said earlier, training with tennis ball. There's all these different challenges where you're going to do like some shooting practice. You've got team training, individual training. You then can do strength and conditioning work, and that's developing you in almost a different way, but it's still around football. And right from the start, you said going on this journey of like self-development, and that's what can happen with football, with the sport. Man, there's so much,
I think with the multi-sport approach, I think a lot of that stuff is quite outdated now, I'd imagine. Because I think back in the day, like our generation, when we would do like a lot of rugby at school and athletics and stuff like that, and I know a lot of the boys that I grew up with would play, a lot of rugby and football predominantly where we're from. So, and there is a big crossover. If you're playing a lot of rugby, you're learning, or you're developing like a lot of agility, robustness as well, just through like the contact side of it. But it's at a point now where, because that was so long ago, I don't think that would hold true now. Because you got the standard of youth football now is so good. If you're spending, you got 7 days in a week, and it's down to the parent to think how much I want to push the child and how serious I am about them fulfilling their potential and wanting to go pro. But if you've got 7 days in a week, back in our day, you might be doing football. There would only be a maximum opportunity to play football 3 or 4 times.
Right.
But now there's a maximum opportunity to do it every single day. So when we were growing up, you could only ever do football on, say, a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
there was nothing else to do on a Monday. So we would play rugby or we would do swimming. But now, instead of rugby or swimming, you've got the opportunity to go and do a one-to-one.
After school clubs generally are with coaches that are really, really underqualified, and it's with against children who are not really interested in football. It's just like childcare. So if you're committing an hour of your training program to that after school club, there's someone else who's in a very, very good session, specializing, getting better. And so now that compounds because you're committing part of the year to that 1 hour per week, and you're getting weaker. You're not kicking on. I mean, that's quite a broad statement, and there might be some examples where it is working well, and you know, in the program it's nice to have a rest kind of week, and they've got friends and it's improving the intrinsic motivation. But going back to Matthew's point, there is this sort of like old school attitude of like, yeah, just play a load of sports because that's what I did in my day, and they're not connecting that the Premier League and the Champions League and the top football in the world is played at such a fast pace now, with like where that has improved so much and the game is that much faster. The demands of players technically and cognitively have like just increased to crazy levels. So you have to get it right at the very bottom end. That's why the training starts at 4 years old, 5 years old, 6. We're building these footballers that can go and play with those demands at that very highest level.
100%. Yeah, and one thing this whole conversation brings me into is like, I've become obsessed with movement as well, and how it incorporates into the game. And for me, I've always been amazed how the South American players move, especially like the Brazilian guys. And I always go back to, and I always ask when I have those type of guys on my podcast, is like, why are you guys like, why does it look when you're playing the game, it's so much more effortless? You're like so much more fluid compared to, you know.
Are you comparing that to Americans? Because I don't think the differences are not as stark as they used to be between Brazilians and Europeans, I don't think, anymore.
For sure. Yeah, but as you see like how they move on the field, like for me, I always go back to like even, you know, I always say like, is it because of the dance culture? Like that coordination, that rhythm that they build. And then when you build that rhythm and coordination without the ball, then when you get the ball and you incorporate that stuff, it's huge.
I could believe that.
And also we see like these players without shoes, you know, just always juggling at the beach, juggling. They're always with the ball at their feet.
Yeah.
So they find, so I think it's about, like we said, it's about a balance of like proper, like structured training, while also, you know, just finding your love for the ball and the game, you know, with your friends at the beach, playing small-sided. So it's like you got to find that balance, and it's easier said than done to find a balance.
One of your videos on your social media channel recommends playing football every day in barefoot.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just it's so important to have the, you know, we have the proprioceptors on our feet, which is, you know, over 50. There's over 50 muscles in our foot. So when we get comfortable with the ball, you know, without shoes, you know, and really develop like that soft touch and develop like that feel for the ball, like when we start to put shoes on, we have a better feel for the ball.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's just, it's about developing a feeling, that foot-eye coordination, that brain coordination, to really get a feeling for the ball.
Is there science behind that, or is that something that's your opinion? Or
yeah, I mean, obviously there's science in terms of the proprioceptors.
Yeah.
And basically what proprioceptors are, it's the there's like specific signals in the foot that trigger a brain to foot coordination and a feeling.
Yeah.
And when you just, you know, it's a combination of like science and also, let's say, my own opinion and working with players.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you just look at other cultures and how they're treating the ball and how they are, you know, in certain situations. Like obviously in the Brazilian culture, in South American, it's a lot of the futebol, you know, beach volleyball, you know, with the feet.
Yeah.
It's a lot of that stuff where they play like off of the table, you know, and everything's in barefoot, and that really allows you to develop that natural feel for the ball.
Grounding.
Yeah.
He's taken me onto this thought.
Yeah.
Do you mind talking a little bit about grounding?
For
We're
sure.
going to get back to your story as well, by the way.
Yeah,
I want to hear more
no
about your
worries.
journey.
No worries.
But just while we're
No
on
worries.
this.
Yeah, so grounding has been proven by multiple studies to reduce inflammation, to improve sleep, reduce stress, because the earth, it has negative ions, and we want to get our feet onto the earth for, you know, I always advise, you know, 15 to 20 minutes per day, and that allows us to improve our circadian rhythm, which is the internal body clock. And for people who don't know, one of the best ways to actually improve your circadian rhythm is, no matter what day of the week, try to go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time every single day.
Yeah.
And when you do that and you get yourself into a routine, then everything else, the body loves routines. Then everything else falls into play. Like when you can, you know, train routinely at the same time, almost eat routinely at the same time, you're going to the bathroom at the same time every single day, your body loves that. And for people who have gotten into that rhythm and then get out of that rhythm, you notice it right away. So for me, one of the biggest tips is, like, right away when you wake up, you get, you know, 2 glasses of water in, maybe a pinch of pink Himalayan sea salt in there, some of those extra minerals and electrolytes because you've been sleeping for 7-8 hours.
Okay.
Then you get out into sunlight for 10 to 15 minutes. And what James Clear talks about is you want to stack habits. So if you're getting your feet onto the ground, and you're in sunlight, you're already stacking those habits, and then you could get into we can get into that deeper, but like working on your nasal breathing, getting in tune with your breath. And basically the science of grounding is, like, when you get your feet on the earth, you get charged up by these ions, and it leads to these, you know, it's been proven by many, you know, scientific studies, it leads to these massive benefits.
I've been using a PEMF mat.
Yeah.
And I've been using it about a week, and
Wow.
I've definitely noticed, man, like I seem to just have like all this like energy coming through me.
Yeah.
I don't think it's good to use it before you go to sleep because you end up having like loads of energy, like as you're going to sleep. So I've stopped doing that now.
Yeah.
But like I can see it. It's definitely work. Our audience are generally parents of young kids. So what you're describing sounds very much like for an adult. But let's say like in the future when you've got your kids, how are you going to develop this in your child?
Very good question. I think for me, it's like, just let, you know, for me, it's like, instead of having the kid on the Xbox, on the PlayStation, try your best to just get him or her outside and
I don't think the kid is using the PlayStation like first thing in the morning. Like, you know, it's a rush to get to school. There might be other kids as well. And it's like, how can you quickly get them some breakfast that they're going to choose to eat? How do we get them to like get their shoes on? Like, it sounds quite manic for parents. So I'm thinking, like, when people say, well, I'm going to get them out in sunlight and I'm going to get them grounding, and like, well, how are you doing that in England? And there's not even any sun in England a lot as well.
100%. And I get that as well from Scandinavian people. Like, Rick, you're telling me to get out inside. I get outside. There's no sun outside. But the lux of light outside is much greater than being under fluorescent light in the morning.
Oh, right.
So even getting outside, and if you don't even see the sun, that lux of light, it wakes you up. You know, it releases cortisol and gets you ready for the day, you know, and that's the whole goal, where it's like you get outside, and that's why people talk about, you know, reducing blue light at night, because you want to release melatonin from the pineal gland. So you wear things like blue light blocking glasses, you dim the screens, you dim the lights, and that gets you ready for sleep. So we want to do the opposite in the morning. We want to get outside, get as much bright light exposure as possible to get us ready for the day, and then it's that whole cycle.
And then it's going to control the circadian rhythm as well, because it gets the child into that routine. But I'm just thinking, like, what age would you be starting to get your child to do that? And do you see a future where your child is like homeschooled? And what country are you living in at this point?
Mate, that's
exciting.
Yeah, I mean, how did you? Let's go back to how you got to playing in Latvia.
Oh no! But why? We want to just like get on this question.
Yeah, but that's so. What country are you going to be living in? You're going to be in Latvia. How did you get to Latvia?
Oh, so,
Oh,
sorry.
go on then. What?
Yeah, no. Do you mind answering that question?
100%. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. So I mean, first of all, like obviously not a parent yet, so I can't really give advice. But for me, it would be like, can I get outside with my boy or girl and just, you know, maybe walk around the block, or obviously I want to have dogs as well, so maybe we walk around the block together. And then it's like, it doesn't become structured. And like, I don't think it should really become structured where you're doing like the water and getting outside until you're about 15, 16.
Oh, right.
I think it's very important to just be a kid. Obviously,
All right.
I'm going to like try to influence my kid in the right direction with the right food, the right training, obviously the right, you know, values and principles. All that stuff is going to be huge for me, but I'm not going to like overly push the structure.
But if you could explain to them the benefits, and you've got such a bond with your child that they want to follow your leadership and your direction, they want to do this stuff.
Yeah.
That would be ideal, wouldn't it?
Well, basically what I would do is my wife and I would be the role model. So we would do these things, and then they would see us doing those things, and they want to emulate it. So my whole goal would be, you know, instead of talking, doing, you know, actions speak louder than words. And then they'll be like, you know, Daddy, what are you doing? And stuff like that. So it's like, I want to influence them in the right way, in the right direction. And then in terms of country and where I'm going to live, man, I don't know. You know, we'll get back to my journey, but I'm a nomad. Like, I've been living out the suitcase for years now.
And because I want to always make things relatable to the audience who are listening, I'm thinking that they might be listening to this advice saying, oh, it's brilliant, it's great advice, but it's not realistic for me. This guy can do it because he's an entrepreneur, he's a nomad, he's living everywhere. All right, they can do that in Scandinavian countries, but in London, that's not realistic. So I think there are still methods that, because you've made it like, that's an image that you've described that I think can happen.
100%.
Like, you know, I think people can find ways. And I think the Project Mbappe's, you know, this sort of joke, but the future footballers will be following Ronaldo's, Haaland's. They will be these children who've optimized their abilities, their routines all the way through to give them the extra edges to become the best. But sorry, Matthew, I really wanted to stick on that. But yeah, no, let's take it back to the story.
You know what, though, on that, because saying that you and your wife would be the role models, I don't know if it's just me, but you don't see too much good role model behavior from the likes of Ronaldo and everyone. As in, you go on their Instagram, and a lot of it is, I might be completely wrong, but from what I see in the modern game now,
100%.
it's a lot of professionals with their fancy cars, money, and you only ever see the top 0.0001%, and they've just spent 10 grand on a coat or whatever it is. I can't really think of too many young professionals who are really kind of trying to put across a positive message about being healthy when you're young.
I disagree, man. I follow a lot with Haaland and Ronaldo, and Ronaldo will be showing him eating only fish.
But barring Ronaldo and Haaland.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean,
generally, like, I don't. I might be wrong, but from what I'm trying to like think, there's always going to be Ronaldo and Haaland, but I don't know. Yeah,
no, I think like I mean, Andros Townsend, he was doing an interview recently where he was saying that pretty much every night for dinner he eats chicken feet because it's got so much collagen in it, and that's him. I think like if you delve in, all these footballers at the very top level are very, very controlled by their clubs.
Exactly.
Through dietitians, through the fitness that they're doing. They're these like huge assets. So they're all generally quite optimized. I know there's going to be some nights out and there's going to be some
100%.
pizzas but I think on the whole, it's a very, very healthy, optimized lifestyle that they live. But it's just on social media, the stuff that potentially is posted a lot for footballers is the stuff that they know is the glamour that's going to get them the likes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
They live the life, but it doesn't feel like they maybe promote it as much as they could do. They promote more of the new car that they got.
Yeah, because that comes back to all the way very, very back at the start of the conversation where we talked about like parents not wanting to hear the sort of like ugly stuff that it takes to become a footballer and those things. And that's again with like what we see on social media. You can say it with like business owners.
Yep.
Business owners don't generally like post up the boring work they
100%.
do of like on their laptop late at night and all the hours. Because it's not glamorous, really.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like your rep, like, it's brilliant. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I would like to see, why has it taken you to start promoting that message? Why aren't pros promoting that message and putting out those tips? It's like it's down to someone like yourself to get out there and do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to a lot of things. Like, I think number one, first of all, that's the reason that I also started my podcast, because I wanted to dive into the lives of professionals and show that it's not these glitz and glamour all the time. It's not the beautiful watches, the nice cars, the beautiful vacations. I wanted to take them into that journey and have the younger kids see how much work you have to put in to get to where you are.
Yeah.
And when you start to ask these pros about their day in the life, it's the same thing. It's boring, it's basic, but that's the thing that's gotten them there.
Yeah.
When they follow that boring and basic lifestyle for years and years and years, that's what produces these players, and that's what gives them longevity in their career. And that's not sexy. The basic stuff isn't sexy. It's the same thing with, let's say, we want to promote our training. The sexy thing is to promote the tricks, the skills, but we all know it's the one-touch passing, the two-touch, the scanning of the shoulder, the right decision. That's not sexy.
100%. And I've like delved into this a lot. And you know the footballer Michael Elise?
Yes.
Michael. Okay, so he's doing really, really well at Crystal Palace and France and 21s. So yeah, very, very involved in his journey. Like something that I've started to think about, and I've talked on some other episodes, is that we're losing potentially mercurial players. And it's something that's being talked about a lot online, yeah. And my theory behind it, because knowing what happened with Michael was very mercurial when he was young. There's a boy called Benicio who's just started getting involved with Benicio Baker with Brighton. Again, another like mercurial talent. These boys were very, very hard to control when they were young, and they were, maybe what you'd say of like quite naughty, quite like badly behaved. Yeah, they were hard work, so then they both ended up getting released from their clubs, like as they're on their journey, like when they're young. And like Michael at the under 14s, he came out of Chelsea, went into Man City, immediately almost like came out of Man City because he just was clashing with the academy structure. And it's like potentially the academies now are needing to produce these players at the top level that will do the ugly stuff. They will be quite boring. They will be able to be controlled, that you can really depend on them. And it's potentially personalities are coming out of the system that can't conform to that. So what we're getting at the very top, I mean, luckily, so fortunately with Michael, he found his way. He had to change. He had to, because he got rejected.
100%.
So he working with his agent, and same with Benicio. And it's like, well, if I don't conform and I don't toe the line and become this sort of person that I have to be to make it, I'm not going to get my dream. So then they end up being what they need to be. And
100%.
Obviously Michael, they have that mercurial part of them.
Yeah,
but it's just
you got to keep that in you too.
Yeah,
I was talking out as well with a buddy as well. Like a lot of coaches are like destroying players' creativity and their own self. Like and come back to what you said. Like I think it's so important how you shape the footballer. And like we said from the beginning, it all goes back to, because we all have different psychology and physiology, and it's all about identifying that exact person and that player. Because like we're talking about all this extra work and this extra training, but like there are some guys that just like they can go out on a night and play unbelievable the next day. Like a guy like myself, I got to do all the right things. You know what I mean? So those footballers are very rare, very rare.
we're gonna skip a little bit, but
Yeah.
I really want to get back into like
Yeah.
hearing the whole thing of
Yeah,
how you
yeah.
become a like footballer and
Yeah.
then all the other stuff, and you've ended up buying the club that you've been involved with.
Yeah.
I want to get into that, but just sticking on this point around you needing to go through all this self-development journey, learn everything it takes to be the best footballer that you can be,
Yeah.
brick by brick.
Yeah.
Has that made you the coach that you are today?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You know, like I said, I've made in my journey, I made a lot of mistakes. Like a very simple one, like when I was 13, 14, I always love to go back to this quote from Sturridge. He says, between 14 and 17 are some of the most crucial development years because that's when the partying comes around, the girls, the drinking, all the glamorous stuff. So if you have the ability to tune all of that out and just focus on the goal. And like if we go back, I wanted to be a professional since I was 6 years old, professional footballer.
right.
I played, like we spoke about, I played tons of sports till about 13, and then I had an English coach come over and he came up to me after the session we had. I think he was like guest coaching for us or something, and he was like, Friedlander, you got a lot of ability in this game. Like, are you playing other sports? And I'm like, yeah, I'm playing lacrosse, baseball, American football, basketball. And he's like, dude, if you want to be a top pro, you just have to focus on football. So after that, I really started focusing on the game. And going back to the story, at about 14, I was playing for one of the best clubs in New York. I was probably one of the better players there. Coach loved me. I was performing well in games. And I got involved with the wrong crowd. 14, 15, 16. I stopped going to trainings. And I thought I was this prima donna. I could just go to the games and play. And that lasted for a couple months. I was going to the games. He was letting me skip the trainings. And then after a while, I think a couple of months down the road, I got a letter from him that, if you're not going to come to the trainings, we want to kick you off the team. So they ended up kicking me off the team. And I actually ended up I stopped playing football for 2 years. So I got involved with the wrong crowd. I didn't think it was cool to work hard, and I wanted to get back into that. Nowadays, sometimes it's there's two ends of the spectrum. It's either you're grind, and you're overdoing the structure and the work, or it's too cool to work hard. So if you could, like we spoke about, come back to that balance, that's huge. But yeah, basically, coming back to your question, your point, my whole goal as a coach is to lead young players, players who are at the prime of their career in the right direction. Because I never had someone telling me, focus on this, focus on that, especially at that age. I wish I had it at 14. You're one of the better players, you got a lot of potential. And when, as a human, when you see hope in the future, there's motivation in the present. And that's the goal. You want to see light at the end of the tunnel. If you're just going through the motions and you don't have older guidance from older pros and people who have been in your shoes, what's your you're just going to training, you don't see a brighter future. So that's why these academies in top places in Europe are so important, because you have these these under 14s, under 15s training next to the first team. You see what you can get into, but in the US, we're starting to develop more. You don't see those role models that you can get into, and then you get influenced and taken down the wrong direction. So my whole goal is to let the individual be their own person, but guide them in their right direction. I don't want to take out their culture, their identity, who they are, because that's why they're at where they're at. But I want to guide them in the right direction. I've had, a couple players now who they're in an off season and they had some big opportunities in big countries. And I told him, I was like, buddy, you have a massive trial. You just got injured and you're partying 10 days in a row. And this kid's 24, 25 years old. What are you doing, man? You're in the prime of your career. You just got injured. Now is the time to work. Sometimes you got to sacrifice. And he's like, oh, but it's been so tough with the injury through the season. And I had to get my mind off things. And I'm like, dude, I understand. But you can do your partying after this. You've just been through an injury. Instead of spending all that money on the vacation, spend money on stuff that's going to recover you and get you in the top form for your next season, next opportunity.
I'm just going to interrupt the podcast for 30 seconds to tell you about We Make Footballers. We Make Footballers are the largest football coaching provider to children aged 4 to 12 in the UK, operating across 200 facilities. We focus on developing the individual, working on the technical and physical components of the game, and it's had amazing results, with hundreds of our ex-players joining professional academies and 4 of our ex-players currently playing in the Premier League. Our program is built around small-sided play using indoor and outdoor facilities. Visit our website, wemakefootballers.com, to see if we have a training facility in your area.
So it's about
red light therapy or PEMF mats.
Yeah, exactly. All this stuff. These different specialists. Invest into your game. Yeah. You know, so.
But that mindset, though, I think you have to develop so early on.
Yeah.
Because it's like a very stoic way to live, and to try and live that way, or to be introduced that way of thinking in your 20s is hard to adopt.
100%.
So it's, you can kind of have those. I mean, like Dennis Rodman's the famous one, isn't he? Of like The Last Dance.
Yeah.
He'd done all that, and then he goes to Vegas for like 2.
Yeah.
It's.
I think it's becoming less and less common. I think the personalities that end up, coming to the top.
Yeah, but I think it's like to try and develop that mindset as early as possible. So then when it does come to crunch time, 16, you start going out drinking, early 20s, you get injured. To try and adopt a stoic mindset at that stage might be too late. You need to try and develop that before. Yeah. So then when you get to 16 and into your early 20s and things like that do crop up,
but
you can deal with it.
The thing is that it's so interesting. Like, you can read as many books as you want. You can be told by as many mentors as you want. But sometimes you just have to experience failures and rejection. Sometimes that's the only way you can learn. And it's sad. Like, you can be advised and guided by guys like Ferdinand and these top players. But until that footballer actually experiences this rejection and failure, I don't know if they'll learn, you know.
All right, so you're back in the story. You're in Germany, and how old are you around this sort of time where you've signed pro in Germany?
So I didn't sign pro yet in Germany. I was actually playing semi-pro in the fifth tier. Yeah. So I played there for till 22. Yeah. I actually came back to the US. I did a showcase in the US.
How are you funding yourself?
So I just I started personal training at 16. Yeah. So I was making money there.
Even through college, you're doing personal training.
Yeah, cool. Saving money there, and I'll eventually get into how I got into opening the business. But in the beginning, 16, 17, I was training people for free, and then just started to develop it into a business. Ended up going to this showcase in the U.S. in Florida. For those, I'm not sure it's so popular here, but in the U.S. now, a lot of these companies, they host showcases where they bring 80 to 100 players. You play 11v11s, and there are scouts, 15 different pro scouts, agents around there. So I did really well. Couple teams were interested in me from Iceland, couple teams from Norway, Finland, and I ended up signing with this agent, Swedish agent. They knew I was playing in Europe, and he really liked that. And he told me to come to Sweden and for preseason. And this was, I think, January, February. I don't remember the year, but I was about 22, turning 23. And he took me to 4 different clubs. 3 out of the 4 clubs wanted to sign me. And I ended up going with a club that, I thought that I could really develop at. So I signed my first pro contract, 22. Played about a year and a half in Sweden. And from Sweden, I made a move. I was going to make a move to Finland. And then I ended up signing. I played in Israel for about a year and a half.
Was it all right to get work permits?
Yeah, so the team sort of for in Sweden, when you have a professional contract and you get paid a certain amount, they give you, so it's much easier in England. Like in these parts of Europe, especially Latvia now, it's quite easy to get a permit. But in other parts like Scandinavia, which is probably the best for Americans, you just get paid a certain amount and then you're granted that work permit for the season.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, had a good experience in Sweden. Moved over to Israel, played there for a year and a half, and then I made a move to Latvia. And I've been there for 3 years. And main reason I came to Latvia is I met this. So I had and this goes back, and I think this is also huge for parents. The importance of networking and just holding yourself to a high standard with everything you do. If you show people around you that you're a true professional, disciplined on and off the pitch, they start to know. They start to know the right coaches, the right people have an eye for that. So I developed a friendship with this guy who, when I was 20 in Germany, who he played in Latvia, and he had a friend who played in Latvia. So I skipped over the story, but I went to, and this is actually maybe an important one. I went to Latvia at 19 to try out for like a top club there who was playing in Europa League.
Yeah.
And since I was and I got that through this coach who knew this guy in Latvia. His name was Gintz. Unfortunately, he passed away this year. Great guy. But so I got that through him, and I was an unknown name at the time. 19, hadn't really played places. I was just in Germany for the year. So they said, Eric, you're gonna train with the second team, and then if you prove yourself, you can train with the first team. So like they had planned to put me with the second team for 1 week, and after 3 sessions, like I proved I was good enough to play with the first team.
Yeah,
had a really good week with the first team. This was my first time playing with like really hungry footballers who were putting, food on the table for their family with the money they're making from football.
Yeah.
And I just saw how grueling it was. And played really well for the week. And the coach, they were ready to have an agreement with me, but they wanted me to play one more game to see, how I was in a friendly. And I had that friendly the next day, and I went to the hotel and I like booked another week because I was confident that I was going to sign at the place, how well I was playing. And, the game was at 9 a.m. the next day.
Yeah.
And, man, I just ended up doing some stupid things at night. Didn't go to sleep till like 4 a.m.
Okay.
And for me, like I need sleep, like to play well and perform well. And got up the next day at 8, slept like 3.5, 4 hours, was doing some stupid things at night. And, I played all right, but I didn't play as well as I was during the week. And as a foreigner, you have to be almost 2 times better than the locals and who they have. So they said like, you're not good enough right now for us to sign with us. Like you could be with our second team. And yeah, I ended up going back to Germany and take us back now to Latvia, where I'm at now. That guy, this guy Gintz, always loved me as a player. Like even when I was 19, like he thought I was a top player, and like he had argued with the management to sign me. He was pushing them, but they had their decision. So we stayed in touch over the years. We stayed in touch, and then he got in touch with me. I think I was 25, 26, and he was at this local club that I just took over, Saldus.
Wait. So how have you taken over the club? How's that happened?
Yeah, so we're going. He was a vice president at the time. He was partners with the current president that we just bought out the club from, and he was like, we want to bring this club to we're in the second tier right now, which is called the Nakotnesliga.
So at that point, you're a player in this team.
Player, yeah. So long story short, I've been playing there 3 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the main reason that I took over this club and the main thing that I want to get out of it is I want to give players that opportunity that I wish I had at a young age. So I want to recruit, we want to recruit undiscovered talent, players who want to play professionally, and we want to give them a chance. So obviously, I've built some good connections. We had a new coach this year from Germany. We did really well with him. We're going to keep him for next year. And the whole goal is to just build this thing into a juggernaut of a club where we make our club a trampoline to higher leagues, because there's been many deals in Latvia where players have gone to Conlon in Germany. One guy just got sold to Spezia in Serie A. Two guys, one guy went to MLS. So there's a pathway, and like we were speaking about when we first got in touch a lot, and we spoke as well, Matt, a lot of these players, especially like these top level talents, whether it's in Italy, England, Spain, like if they don't get signed by the academy, they think their chance is over. So if we can be that backdoor to players getting that opportunity, that's the goal.
Definitely.
We want to provide hope.
The amazing thing is your journey, and it would be interesting to see young players' kind of response to, all right, you want to be a pro, follow your journey. Mm-hmm. You're a pro, but how many of them just want to play for Chelsea? They don't actually understand being a professional might require moving abroad. Like to go from Germany, Sweden, Latvia, Israel, Latvia, like you're living the life of a professional football player. But it'd be for English kids specifically, like the way that we're kind of raised over here. English people don't go abroad unless it's south of Spain. So to say to a lot of talented younger players here, move to Latvia, how many of them would actually do it?
Yeah, I think they've got to look at inspiration from like Jadon Sancho, Jude Bellingham, but that's Tafori.
Definitely that, but even that's like they went to Dortmund, they went to Germany. But to actually like go to somewhere like Latvia where it's completely different and it's the lower league.
So you were playing in Latvia, and then this scout, this person from Sweden who believed in you, got onto the board, or he was friends with the vice president. How did the conversation come about for you to buy into the club?
Yes, so basically I got scouted at 23 to go to Sweden. Signed that first pro contract, boom, played a year and a half in Sweden, Israel for a year and a half. Then, like I said, I got that opportunity at 19 from this guy in Latvia.
Yeah.
And I kept in touch with him. Yeah. Because he was the greatest guy. Like, you don't meet guys like this in football. Did everything for the grace of God, never wanted me to, take him to dinner or stuff. Wow. He was just doing things because he believed in me,
That's cool.
And yeah, he called me when I was 26 and he said, we're trying to take this club up. I'm a vice president now. I'm on the board. We want to bring you in.
As a player.
Yeah. And I played there this was my third season, just finished. And we actually had talks of doing this project. It started when I first got there. Because I saw, and like Matt said, like no one sees, unless you're on the ground and doing the due diligence and you see how the football works and the system works and the culture, it's a great place. It's a great place. Like if you're like an open-minded person and you have strong ambition and big goals, these, let's say, like I spoke to you on the phone, I like to call it a blue ocean strategy. For those who are listening, Blue Ocean Strategy, massive book, whether you're in business or a footballer. You got to, there are red oceans. These are the competitive markets, Germany, England, Sweden. I would say Germany, England, Italy, all these top footballing nations. But if you don't sign that academy contract or you don't sign that pro contract in these top countries, instead of playing, and this is a regret, what I wish I did. Instead of playing in the 5th league in Germany, I would have rather tried to come over to Latvia at 19, stayed in that 2nd league environment. Boom, then I'm playing 1st league at 2021. That's better than then I have eyes on possible Europa League chances, possible Champions League chances. Like, if you can start competing in the blue oceans where there's not as much competition and stop trying to force your way through the door in the red oceans, you can even play in those smaller countries, and then you could come back to your country and play at a higher level. So it's kind of the backdoor approach.
What's the style of football in Latvia?
So style of football, it's a very 1v1 approach. Very interesting. Yeah, like, and that's what our coach talks about. Like, and he's really adapted our style of play, which I love German football. It's some of my favorite football. So we try to play a high intensity pressing, German type of football.
Yeah.
But, like instead of like players, if they have a man on their back, instead of laying that ball off to a man facing forwards, they're trying to turn guys. And like our coach never liked that. And I completely agree because it speeds up the play. Boom, lay it off. Boom, forward already. That up, back, through approach instead of trying to turn guys. So, It's very physical. Guys are quite fit, and there's a pretty disciplined approach. But in our league, it's quite mixed. So it depends on the team you're playing, and it depends on the approach.
That's really interesting. Have you heard of a style of football called relationism?
No.
Yeah, it's a sort of movement of football that's happening in South America.
Okay.
It's sort of like a revert back to the old days. Like there's a whole really great video on it that people can research. And it basically shows this spectrum where Pep Guardiola is on the left side of the spectrum, and he is super controlling. Everything is super controlled. And then on the other end, you've got this side, these Brazilian teams and this Brazilian approach, which is relationism. And it kind of is what you're talking about with a sort of disregard for tactics, disregard for any sort of like patterns to play out. It's just, we're going to be so good 1v1, we're just going to just play off like instinct. And it's really interesting because the results of the side in Brazil who has adopted this the most, they've got as many wins as Man City.
Wow.
Yeah. And it would be interesting to see if they ever played each other.
Yeah.
Because those contrasting styles, and there's maybe this sort of like rejection of what this football is that Guardiola has created, that everyone's feeling like they have to copy. Because I know that Brazil have had some criticism in recent years with their national side where they've sort of been considered more European and they've gone away from what makes them special. And that's why earlier on I sort of like picked you up on what you'd said around the Brazilian movement, because it's almost like we don't see it as we used to in the old days.
True.
Where like if you think of like Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, and just how they just took the mick when they played, and it would just be like cheating almost. But then now, maybe because the way teams are set up, the same type of players might be there, but they're hidden more because teams understand how to control them and defend against them. But anyway, it's just interesting to understand about the style of football in Latvia, because if players are going to make that step from playing academy football in England, and we've just done an episode recently which was about like the drop down to national league and lower leagues in England, which a lot of academy players end up doing. They want to stay in their local area, close to their families, close to their friends, where they're comfortable. So they just sign for the local non-league club, even though they would have opportunities maybe at some higher clubs abroad. But then they're not suited to the style of football that's down there in the lower leagues. They can't cope with it, so it's very, very different. It's a real culture shock for them.
100%.
So potentially, if the style of football suited them more in Latvia, I just was interested in that transition. Yeah,
and then also, like, I think it depends on the coach. You know what I mean? Like our coach is coming from Germany. He's trying to bring his approach, and I really, really enjoy it. So I think, what you said is like, I think this whole thing that we're talking about, come to a culmination. It's like, you got to get out of your, like, if you want to be a footballer, top footballer, you just got to get out of your comfort zone. You can't do the same, you got to find your own way, your own path. And for me, that's why I love like diving into the minds of other footballers to hear their journey and their why, because it's not all a, step-by-step path to the first team. People get rejected. There are failures. And does that failure lead them to use that dark side motivation to improve, or does that lead to worse things, and you can pick two paths. And I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to that proper self-analysis, like how bad do you actually want it? And I think it requires you as a player, not being pushed by parents, maybe guided in the right direction, but you as a player to look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm going to dedicate myself. Okay, say, for example, you're 14. I'm going to dedicate myself 6 years to being a pro. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be a pro. And you have to have that commitment, because there are tons of different roads that you can take. You get influenced, like we said, by distractions. You get influenced by the wrong people. You get influenced by people saying you should focus on education. You should focus on a plan B. But I think you should give yourself a time limit. I think having those standards and those proper, deadlines on yourself create a positive pressure to do everything every day to be a top footballer, because it's not easy to be at those levels, and the consistency you need to have the discipline every single day to do the right things is not easy.
I like what you said earlier about standards off the pitch as well, because that's something you can definitely start to notice in younger players, and it's that's just a perfect example of you left an impression on somebody who years later then gets back in touch to give you the opportunity, but not more so, but for as much as what you were doing off the pitch, how you affected him. So 100%. He knew you was a good player, but he got back in touch with you because of the stuff you did off the pitch as well. So we know players that, phenomenal players, but I would bet they're not going to go far in football because you can just see how they behave off the field.
Yeah.
Picking up on what you said about that guy, and you said you don't meet people like that in football. There are special people in football.
Yeah. Hard to meet them though.
It's true. Yeah. But I think there are a lot of people that would say there's been a coach, or there's been someone, a scout, there's been someone on the journey, or people on the journey who have looked out for them. And there's so many stories of footballers that have made it that can link back and say, oh, this person was so good for me.
100%. Yeah, and that's the beauty of football. All you need is one person. You just need one believer. You can have 20, 30 rejections, but if you have one believer, whether it's a guy, an agent, whether it's a coach, and that's why football is also so beautiful. You know what I mean? And you can have football, when you're a pro and you're out of contract, that's probably the toughest period. And there are two directions that you can have. You can either have no options, or you can have a ton of options. There's really no in between. And that's what players struggle with. When they're out of contract, they don't take their training seriously. They don't, they might not take, and then that opportunity comes and they're not ready. And success is preparation plus opportunity. So you always got to be ready. And like you said, football is just, you never know what's going to happen. So the goal of always being ready, like I said, every day is game day, should be the goal for players.
You will eternally be grateful to that person for the impact they had
100%.
On changing your life. And I think for coaches who are listening to this, and people who work in football, it's so important to understand that, I think, recognize how much of a difference that you can make to people's lives. With the scouting that I do for Chelsea, it's not, Chelsea's well-played club, but people that work at Chelsea as scouts, the majority are part-time, and you don't do it for the money. So there are moments you have where my favorite thing to do every year is that you get told by the club, right, we're going to offer this 7-year-old, this 8-year-old, the contract for under 9s. And so, sometimes you'll get that information, and you're not allowed to tell the parent, but and you've known the journey that they've been on for the last few years, and you're just so happy for them. But once they finally got the news, sometimes you get to be in the room when they tell the kid, and it's just the best feeling. Or sometimes that Chelsea will say, right, you can bring the parent and you can tell them, and it's the best thing.
100%.
And I think for coaches, you're not going to be able to get every kid in your team to get a pro contract, but can you, what should be your goal? I think that the motivation for grassroots coaches and people that work in football is to help the players be the best they can be, and be really, really focused on that, not trophies. I know that sounds nuts, but in the future, you don't remember a game that you won how many years ago. You don't remember that score, but you will remember how you got that child to maybe be a pro footballer, or maybe had such an improvement in their personality through football that they see when they're older and they're like, oh, thank you, you were my coach and you were so good, you developed me so much. So yeah, I mean, England's had to go through a long journey with like trying to improve our culture away from what I think is a problem in grassroots football in America, as I kind of experienced. I think there's a change, but I think American culture is like you play to win trophies,
Results,
you play to win matches, and it's not for the best of development, I think, for football. I don't know if you've got any feelings on that, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, it's still quite bad within England as well.
I know.
Playing for results under 8s, under 9s.
Yeah.
And
it's still there, you said?
It is.
Yeah.
But it's got better.
It's got better, but it's still there. But yeah, we can both look back and say, like, I can't remember anything about the team that we had.
Yeah.
But the fact that we can call Lewis, as a boy that we coached when we started coaching when he was 4 years old. He's now 24, playing professionally.
Wow.
And you still have that relationship with him. But that's the thing
unreal.
that...
From that one team that we were the team
Love
of,
that.
there's like 5 pros. Like Rohan Luthra, Cardiff pro, Michael Elise, Nathan Meyer Welsh, Lewis Richards.
Wow.
Sorry, and Matthew Dennis.
Matthew Dennis.
Bloody hell. 5 pros from just one little 7-a-side team.
Wow.
But the fact that, yeah...
How do you think you guys played a role in their development to get in there?
Never played for results. We just loved football, loved nurturing football players, just did what we thought was right by them, knowing that
These were talented kids like before they've come to us. So it's like you've had an impact in that foundational period of under 7s, under 8s. You know, that period. You get them to play out the right way. You get them to express themselves. Like we're all about nutmegs and enjoying it and creativity and do your thing and also like believe in yourself, like pushing players. I've got it in my head of a game 1-0 0-0 against this like rivals Isha and like 0-0 and it's a really cagey game under 8s and then you're just like going on to Michael, you're like, come on Michael, you can do it, like, you know, find something, you know, go into your special players, come on, where's your moment? And then, you know, Michael just ends up just like dancing between literally 3 players and arrowing the ball to the top corner. You've just kind of like, as a coach, you've facilitated it, but you can't take credit. I mean, that's like his genetics are what they are. Yeah. But I think that's where, you need to, understand your role with these players.
The point being, the motivation was nurturing players. Mm-hmm. It was the love and the passion was to make the players the best they could be. Exactly. It's that if you're playing out from the back because you're helping Matthew Dennis know that he's got to be able to go into Arsenal's defence and they want their centre backs to be ball playing. So you're saying, look, express yourself, do what you need. He might lose the ball and then we concede. Oh well, who cares? Because he just got a contract for a pro club.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it goes back to, you know, just like, you know, youth coaches, it's like you look to develop the players on and off the field and you hold them to a certain standard. I think holding people to a certain high standard will, you know, improve every area of their life. And I always like to look at things, how you do anything is how you do everything. Yeah. So are you making your bed in the morning? Yeah. Like simple things like that. Like, you know, are you, you know, when you're doing the dishes, are you actually are you doing the dishes to make the dishes good or are you doing them half-ass? You know, so it's those simple things. And like when you teach these players, like maybe they don't go on to sign a pro contract, but they take that discipline and they become a doctor. Or they become a lawyer or whatever it is. Like they take that discipline and those standards that they learned from, you know, their youth coaches and then they, you know, they remember you.
96% of CEOs in S&P 500 companies played elite college level sport in America. Yeah. And they link that study to the benefits that you get from playing elite sport. Like these top organizations, these corporations, they want to see that their people have got the resilience and they've got discipline and they've got these things from playing sport. So we question ourselves because the chances of becoming a pro footballer are so slim. So you're suddenly saying, well, is it right to encourage people even to go on this project footballer journey? But more and more you research it, as long as you are teaching skills along the way that give people tools to come out of football and still be successful, then yeah, go for it.
100%.
Yeah, definitely go for it.
I'm scared that they're going to come and kick us out. But I'm just still quite fascinated by, I think, how did you, or do you know how you've had this approach to becoming a pro? Because like I say, I think if we were to offer some of the young players we know the opportunity to be a pro, but then you turn around and went, oh, it's in Latvia, they wouldn't do it. So do they really want to be a pro football player because they're not willing to do something like that?
Yeah.
So how have you developed this mindset where, I'll go and play pro in Israel. Yeah, I'll go and play pro in Latvia. And
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to that rejection that I had at 14 where I was one of the better players and they kicked me off the team. And then like I got back into football at 16 and I was average. I wasn't a top player. So like now I'm trying to do the catching up. And let me just, proceed all this with, all my friends say to me, like, I don't know how you do what you do. Like, I don't know how you have to be absolutely mental. Like you have to have a strong mind. And like I've said from the beginning, all this has helped me to develop my business on the side because, it's not easy to go live alone in a country that you don't know the language, you don't have family, you don't have friends yet. And all of that has made me into the man who I am today. And that's why, I try to, not the best coach in the world, but I try to give my scientific and my theoretical learning and my practical learning to these young footballers because I think I had a decent experience overseas, living in 5 different countries, playing in 5 different countries. And one of the best things that I take away from my journey is I call it like a sociology class. I've, discovered there's different ways to talk to different cultures, to different people. There's different relationships between men and women in different countries. And it's all just interesting to me. And I take that into my journey when I'm going to be hopefully pushing these players to higher levels to tune into their psychology, their physiology, like where are they from, and take all that into account and not treat everyone like the same person. Because, that's the biggest thing. And we go back, like, I don't know, it might sound, interesting, but I enjoy doing hard things. I enjoy suffering. It might sound harsh, but like I enjoy pushing myself out of the comfort zone. I've never been a guy where, I've always been a guy, 99 people go this way, I'm the one that goes the other way. Like I've always wanted to do something different. Like if we get back to the roots, like my dad, wanted me to do the traditional route. 4 years in college, get a job, boom, if I don't get a professional contract out of playing college soccer, college football, then I should go get a real job. And I've never wanted to do that. And I use that dark side motivation to do my own thing.
So what's your role now at the club?
So I'm the GM.
Okay. So we can, if we got players, we can give you a shout, and if any boys want to move to Latvia, you look after them.
100%. Yeah. So right now we have first tier investors who've invested into the first part of the project, and like now we're looking at second tier investors. So I've maybe made like 30 revisions to a pitch deck that I'm trying to get to investors because not a lot of people know where Latvia is, what type of football there is, what type of currency. So I met a guy through one of my friends who works at Crystal Palace who has helped me, who has advised me on this pitch deck. He's actually English. And it's very interesting to hear his approach. Like he was being, like I said from the beginning, like I like people who play the devil's advocate. Like what if an English investor comes in, they don't know the standard of football? Like give me some like case studies. So like basically my role right now is to get the international community involved. I don't know. I've been telling you, like my whole goal has been to document this journey.
Yeah, like I've seen it on your social media. Just while you're here, can you tell us your social media handle so people can follow you?
Yeah. So at rick.fit. So on every platform, rick.fit. or you just search, Ricfit on Google, I'm sure a lot of things will pop up.
Right. Yeah. So on your social media channels, like, it's great. Like, this is why I sort of reached out to you, wanted to get you onto the podcast.
How did you find me, by the way?
I don't know. I mean, once you're in the network, Yeah. So like, found you, saw your channel, like, was like, yeah, man, this guy knows his stuff. Like,
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So good. But like, I love what you're doing with educating Latvia, like educating people about what it would be like. Like, there's one of your videos where you go through and you show the apartment, and it's a apartment, like, it's a good apartment. It's what a footballer needs. You say that in the episode. And for what, like, Matthew with his business partner that's just bought into Scunthorpe, and their long-term vision for Scunthorpe is to get players like from clubs, and there's a whole thing happening with that. And one of the things that I said is that you've got to find a way to sell Scunthorpe to some of these like players, because like
that's what it is.
The shops, the restaurants, the clubs, it's very different to London, if that's what you're used to, or some of the big cities. So, but like, if you could use media to just literally like show it all, people can be like, all right, well, yeah, I can believe that. You sell them a story, you make them understand that it's all right, you're going to be hustling, you're going to be working hard, but look, this is what, it's not so bad.
Yeah. And what's interesting, and something that I really want to point out, is, people see me on this journey, they see me on social media, they see with all the followers, and they're like, wow, this guy must be, just cruising through, he's the owner of a club. But I don't think people understand the pushback you get, from Latvian like Twitter accounts, and like, it's interesting, you grow on media, and then you actually see the behavior of humans, you know what I mean? And I could tell right away that the fact that you respect my content, it shows that you're secure in yourself and what you do. And a lot of people who comment on this stuff, I notice that I start to, I've taken a different approach. Like, in the beginning, I was a bit angry when I started to see criticism, and I wanted to bite back.
Oh, right.
But now I've taken a different approach. I don't know if you've heard of Gary Vaynerchuk, but he says, when people are going to come, into your, space, you're trying to promote positivity, opportunity, and be negative on your stuff, you got to start to feel bad for them.
Yeah.
You can't take it to heart, man, because they're behind the keyboard. They're not doing what you do. And at the end of the day, haters are never above you. Yeah. They're always below you.
But sometimes there's a real opportunity to educate through that. So like, we would have an Instagram post, and I know like I might be coming at something a bit left field, a bit new. It's different to convention. So then you'll get people that will come and bite at it. And I'm like, fine, let's have this discussion openly, because I'll educate you all day long. And then the other people start seeing how you are and your response to this person who might have given criticism or a real different view. And then you'll have more people that will say, that's interesting. Yeah. So you kind of like, really, it's okay. I mean, that kind of 80-20 rule
100%.
is okay to have people that don't feel you, they're not wanting to follow you, fine. But there'll be a lot of other people that will, and you have to stand for something.
100%. And you maybe just gave me some great practical advice to start maybe interacting more with the comments, because once I started getting that negative stuff, I'm a very big guy, and we can go into a whole different episode with this. I'm very big into flow. Like, when I'm in my flow and not distracted by outside noise, that's when I get my best creativity and my best work. And when I'm diving into comments and seeing this negativity, it just puts me in a bad mind state.
Right.
And I think that's something that I got to work on. But like, I would rather just like ignore it, push it away, and just keep doing the right things. And I know eventually the truth will be exposed.
An experience for me, I mean, we're going quite off topic now, but like, sometimes like, what I've experienced through managing the Instagram account that's ended up having like a lot of followers, there's been some posts that will end up going viral, and then you do start feeling like sorry for people, as in like, oh, that's sad that you have that attitude, that you have that belief, because if you're seeing how hundreds of people, thousands of people believe on topics, and it can be some like sexist attitudes, or it could be like racist attitudes, you're seeing how some parts of society can be.
100%.
Which is hard that's disappointing. That's hard to deal with. Like, see those comments and see people's mindset. But yeah, you know, the world is the world, what it is, and yeah.
100%. Yeah, and I just always go on, you know, doing the right thing is always the right thing. So just keep on pushing the positive message.
Yeah.
And my goal is just to keep on inspiring footballers, you know,
Love that.
like I haven't had a traditional journey at all.
No.
You guys have seen. But I love what I do. And like you said, what really ticked my mind when you said, if you could change one person's life, that's all it takes, you know, because you change one person's life, then they can change another. Then they have a whole network of other people that they could change. So it's like, can you just Jordan Peterson said this, like if you meet one person, you change their life, they may have a noted network of 300 people.
Yeah.
Then they influence them in a positive way. Then, you know, that's how you change everything and make people happy in the world.
That's it. And that's where doing a podcast is cool, because like, you know, we've been in the game for a long time. When you're in it for a long time, and you're making differences and so on, you're getting a lot of case studies, a lot of experiences, then you start to hold a lot of knowledge and information, and it might be good to share that information and that help with a few people. If you're not on a podcast, then you can only do it verbally and through your sort of like immediate circle. Whereas you start to have podcasts and scale, now you can like put that information out to a lot of people.
100%.
And then you can create some really, really good change and really change cultures, and we just move things on and evolve a lot. And yeah, that's a real driver. When you start getting people messaging saying, oh my God, your podcast helped me so much. Oh, thank you. Like you're like, oh wow, information's helpful.
100%. Yeah, and I really hope, and I think that this will continue to grow, because I'm not a fan of the TikTokification of the world. I like the podcast because, you know, people could see a 30-second clip of me and think I'm a prick, but they never listen to me on a podcast, you know what I mean, and express my full thoughts. And going into one more thing, like, I think that young footballers and parents should be super grateful of the world we're living in. We could criticize social media as much as we want, but we have guys jumping on podcasts. You got Kevin Prince Boateng jumping on Rios.
Yeah.
You got these top footballers jumping on these podcasts. We got to be grateful for these resources.
The information
Dive
is
into it.
out there, becomes a real leveler.
Yeah.
Maybe in the old days, certain people generationally held on to the blueprints of how to become footballers, but now the information is out there. So it's down to you and your family. Are you going to follow the information from the right people and then work hard and work smart? We're going to probably end up getting kicked out. Is there anything more that you wanted to ask, Matthew, before we ended the episode?
No. No, there's loads and loads and loads of really, really cool bits.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's still quite fascinating, the fact that you've 5 different countries. And again, I think that the really striking thing for me is the culture in English youth football. How many of them would be willing to take your journey? Like, do they really want to be professional football players, or are they looking at the top 1% and wanting that and not be a professional football player? Which is, really, really interesting.
I think this is probably going to be a part 1. I feel
Yeah,
like
100%,
we need to come and get you.
I told you I could talk,
again.
man.
Nice class, man. That is so good. Like, really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
I love episodes that we can give things like tangible advice to parents. I think they'll be there with their notepads, just like, oh yeah, so I've got to get the tennis ball, and I've got to do some grounding in the morning, and 100%. I need to do this, and hopefully like they've really picked up on a lot of this, and it's been very thought provoking for parents listening. Thank you so much for your time, Eric.
Yeah, appreciate it. I just want to end off with one thing that I always like to say.
Yeah.
You can do anything you put your mind to. Don't put limits on it. If you work in the right way, in the smart way, and you have the right mentors and listen to the right people, you can do anything you want.
Love that. Thank you, mate.
Appreciate it. Oh, that's a great one.
That was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.